This is the Hidden Killers podcast with Tony Brueski.
Featuring author, psychologist, and daily contributor, Shavaun Scott.
Ashley Benefield, the Black Swan murder trial, it has wrapped up, and she has been found guilty of manslaughter, a lesser charge than second-degree murder, the initial charges that were brought against her. She now faces up to 30 years in prison for that. We have a lot to break down, from the closing arguments to Ashley taking the stand with Shavaun Scott, psychotherapist and author. I've been really looking forward to talking with you about this from a psychological standpoint, because there's a lot to dissect here. And before we get into the verdict, before we get into all that, I want to go back to initially the closing arguments that were made, and also Ashley on the stand. We should probably actually start there, because that's obviously before closing. She was up there the other day. Quite a show. And I think it left a lot of people, emotionally affected. I've heard people crying. I've heard people saying she's full of crap. I've heard everything on this, and we'll take a look in a moment. But before we do that, what was your reaction to her, the prosecution on the stand after her on cross, and also her own defense, questioning her about the situation?
Yeah, I have to say, I went into this case trying to stay very neutral about it, and I have worked a lot with domestic violence cases over the years. I used to run a domestic violence counseling center for women, and I have strong feelings about it, but I've also seen cases where people have lied or where people exaggerate, and so, of course, not everything that's alleged is always true. But I found her testimony so incredibly compelling, and I thought the defense did a remarkable job of putting on the evidence, including professionals. I thought they really proved their case. And I thought the prosecuting attorney really put her through a meat grinder. And I think that was one of the things that was so hard for people to witness. It just really seemed to put her back in a state of PTSD. And we all felt that as we were observing it.
Yeah, I try to be very middle of the road on this one, too. Initially, I was very thinking, I don't know, because we're going to hear from the defense of, or the prosecution of everything that led up to this, and Ashley kind of running around, not letting the father of her child have any access. And there had been no court order saying you can't. It was just really, not ethical or legal activity, quite honestly, that she was engaged in there. But then we heard her voice on the stand. Let's take a look at this, and we'll talk on the other side. This is when she's being grilled by the prosecution, and I want you to pay attention to kind of what I would look at as some kind of hot and cold reactions here, from utter distress to everything's okay. And I want to hear what your thoughts are on the other side. Let's look.
But on this day, you weren't concerned about him coming over.
No, I knew he was coming.
Okay. And when he came over, your mother and Emerson went to the park.
I believe they were headed there. I'm not sure. I think they were down the driveway or on the sidewalk, something like that. They were on their way there.
You weren't so afraid that you wanted your mother to stay there and watch.
No, we were just packing to move.
Okay, so you weren't afraid.
I definitely didn't expect this to happen.
So it was up to you that your mother left.
Yeah, at that time.
Okay. So if I heard you right during your direct, you said he bumped your shoulder twice. Body check, I don't know if that's what you called it. He walked into you with a box, right?
Yes.
And then at the end, you say he slapped you?
He hit me. I wouldn't know how to classify it. He struck me, he hit me.
Was his hand open or closed?
I don't remember.
Okay. And because of those things, you claim that you thought he was going to kill you.
He had never hit me before.
Okay. And you thought he was going to kill you.
He wouldn't let me leave. I tried to leave. He stopped me.
The question is, you thought he was going to kill you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when you were in the bedroom, you decided to get your firearm. And it was where?
It was in a storage bin on top of the laundry basket.
Okay. So I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 52. If you could turn around and look at that. Where was your firearm?
It was in the bin on top of the basket.
Here?
That's the basket. The laundry
Where was the
basket.
bin?
It's that right on top.
Okay, so it was in here.
Yes, ma'am.
Why would you have a firearm in there?
I had just emptied all the furniture and everything out of my room, and it was kind of like what was left from my drawers, and so it got put into a bin.
Okay. And that was not your only firearm in that room, correct?
Correct.
You had a firearm in the closet.
My carry gun was in my backpack, which is my purse at the time.
So in this room, with a mattress and a broom and a hamper, you had 2 firearms.
Yes.
So you go into the room and you grab your firearm. Is it in a holster?
I don't remember.
Okay. And you claim that Doug does what?
He came and slammed the door open. He was standing in the doorway. He said, "You're fucking done."
He said, "You're fucking done." And that made you fear for your life.
Yeah.
That's a testimony that we heard. What was your reaction to that? Seeing it again?
Yeah, I feel that she's genuine.
Yeah.
You know, she's consistent. She's clearly having a variety of emotional reactions as she goes through and tries to put herself back in the scene and tell the story. She's affected on a very deep level. I didn't get the sense that she's rehearsed or play acting. It seemed very genuine to me. And in the cases I've seen, the many, many cases of women who have been through scenarios like this, it's just kind of classic. The prosecutor wanted to make the point in the beginning, well, why did you let him come over? You let your mother leave. You couldn't have been that afraid. Well, that's how these relationships work.
Sure.
Because the victim over time comes to believe that if I behave just so, if I do all the right things, I'll get the good side of him and things will be fine. And they don't ever expect that it's going to go bad. And so when it does go bad, it's almost like it's a surprise to them again. And so it may sound non-rational, but humans are non-rational.
True.
And that's just how these relationships go.
And that's kind of where I have some questions about the rationality with some of this stuff. I was surprised at some of her testimony there of, did he slap you? Did he hit you? Like, what happened? And she doesn't seem to remember that moment of what it actually was. I find that one a little odd. I would think that after going through this is something that you would have in your mind, at least an idea of, there's a big difference between being punched and being slapped. And it was, from what we've heard in the past, number one, she has made allegations that he was physically abusive in the past. It turns out she just said there that he wasn't. So she has contradicting stories right there to previous testimony in a child custody case. To say, I don't remember here what happened, I don't know. I just find that odd. I mean, is that something that one's going to block out in a traumatic moment?
Yeah, I didn't have the sense that she was blocking out what happened. She simply only knew, and she may not have been looking at him at the time he struck her, and it could have been a slap or a backhanded slap. And if she wasn't anticipating it, she wasn't expecting it, she wasn't looking at him as he did it.
Sure.
She only knew she was struck.
That there was a strike going on. Yeah.
Something hit her. And she knew it was him, but she hadn't been focused and paying attention and trying to go, oh, I better remember exactly how this happened because someday I'm going to be testifying in court about it.
Sure.
You know, so that really wasn't where her focus was. It was more of a fight, flight, survival. She knew she was hit. She knew she wanted to get away. And then he prevented her from leaving, which is always a really bad thing.
Yeah.
And again, a sign of one of these really scary relationships when the, perpetrator doesn't allow the victim to leave.
And I don't feel like Doug is any angel here. I don't want to have that come across that I'm not believing a victim. I believe there's a big mix of everything that was going on here. I feel like these are two toxic individuals who had very toxic behavior, liked guns a little bit too obsessively. and were quick to react and quick for emotion. And I mean, look, they got married after 13 days, so they're fairly impulsive people. It's a more understanding that someone's going to draw a gun this quickly if you're already an impulsive person.
Are you ready to listen to this podcast ad-free?
Then hit subscribe to the True Crime Today Premium Plus channel now on Apple Podcasts.
You'll instantly have access to all of our episodes labeled Advance ad-free. You'll hear the interviews before everyone else and with no interruption.
No interruptions.
Subscribe to the True Crime Today Premium Plus channel now on Apple Podcasts.
And start binging now.